It is the year 2472, and the Earth has suffered a great calamity. Hundreds of years of popular culture have vanished. Without the sacred films and texts for guidance, civilization is devoid of anything cool. Then, 3 incubation chambers are unearthed, and from within, men from the time of the great blockbusters emerge. Now, through highly interesting conversations, they share invaluable insight about what once was. The movies, the shows, the comics, toys, and books. This is
the Hyperspace
Podcasting in the 25th century.
Welcome in, podcast pioneers, to the Hyperspace Podcasting in the 25th century, the interweb's first and only podcast. My name is Jared.
My name's Matt.
And I'm Mike.
And my name's George. And as you see, I am Gene Roddenberry.
Man, they just follow us around, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Okay, what are you guys going to talk about tonight? Well, you see, George, I thought we would talk about some Star Trek, because there's plenty of Star Wars talked about on this show.
If you guys if your listeners haven't listened to our audio drama that we put out not long ago, you'd realize that that the hologram ghost of George Lucas has followed us home and is kind of a resident now.
Yeah, you sons of bitches. Yeah.
I highly recommend, if you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to
that was the first. I got some good feedback on that.
It was
that
fun.
Was a lot of people, they really started losing it when the farts started about 3 seconds in.
It's just cheap humor, isn't it? It's
always
easy,
good.
Slow pitch, man. Just a slow pitch.
My dad reached out to me.
Your dad? That's amazing. He's like, hey, that's pretty funny, those farts. It's low-hanging fruit, but you know.
You take what you can get. What's up, guys? Mike, how you doing? You look good.
How are you?
Good. You look
thank
good.
you.
You
You look nice. You look nice with your beard that's
you know,
growing in.
I'm going to tell you, you're not there yet because the hair is definitely not there. But the rest of your face is very much like the black hole, the commander of the ship. You're starting to get that kind of look. What was his name?
Cygnus?
Yes.
You mean Maximilian
Schnell?
Schnell?
Yeah.
It was a good man.
That's who you are. You're becoming this character, which is nice.
Oh, man.
I guess he was kind of a handsome fellow.
He's very dashing in space. I can hear the overture right now in my head just looking at you.
Yeah, man. We still haven't done that black hole commentary.
We've been talking about that for a long time.
Look. We just should bang that out. Maybe that's our New Year's present to everybody, is a black hole commentary. That's that'd be something else. Well, look, we're not talking about black hole tonight.
No.
Now, if you remember,
franchise,
a few episodes back, me and Matt recorded an episode by ourselves because Mike was elsewhere, because Mike was going to meet someone. Who were you going to meet, Mike?
I went to an evening with William Shatner.
So jealous.
I spent just me and Will. Me and Billy. That's what I call him.
Like in one of those bounce house places?
Yeah, Billy.
Hold on.
Bounce house.
Yeah, I drove all the way up to, was it Lexington?
Lexington, Kentucky.
I got this image of the two of you like skipping with like that "Do you believe in magic" song like playing in the background. Balloons and cotton candy.
Oh, well, whatever happens, I mean, Mike's picture with Bill needs to be part of the thumbnail.
That's true.
For this episode.
Yeah, so give us the lowdown, man. How'd that go?
Well, first I'm trying to remember who.
Bill Shatner played.
William
Kirk.
Shatner.
No,
yes.
I know who he is. Hold on, I gotta find.
He was also T.J. Hooker and was in Airplane 2.
Who presented the the whole thing. I can't believe I can't forget. It starts with an M.
He was also in that great creature feature with spiders that took over a town. You ever watch that one?
I watched that when I was a kid, and I'll be honest with you, it made me scared that.
Was it called
Me
Them?
too.
Was it
crap
Them?
out of me?
Maybe it was like that between Star Trek and T.J. Hooker days, and he was paying the
I think it
rent
was
with a spider
before,
creature feature. Was it?
Yeah, it was before T.J. Hooker because
Yeah,
I
it was
watched
definitely
I
before
remember
T.J. Hooker.
I watched it on TV,
Okay.
and
Was it a
so
TV
it had-
movie?
I don't. Hold
I,
on.
I think it was just a creature feature B movie.
1977,
Oh, there you go. 77. Oh,
and it was a theatrical release.
yeah. He's
Okay,
paying
so
the rent.
he took a break from doing supermarket TV commercials to make this one.
Yeah,
What was
I'll
that called?
say that's
Is
a
it them?
movie,
What was it called?
Kingdom of the Spiders.
Kingdom of the Spiders.
Okay.
That's right.
And it's one of those movies I've always wanted. I'd like to go back and revisit, but I'm kind of afraid to because
I know you're scared as a kid, and it's going to be too cheesy now.
it's going to be, because I remember, I mean, the funny thing about that movie is when it came on, I guess we had spent the day cleaning out the garage in our old house. And so I had to get up the next morning early we didn't have trash pickup, but I guess my dad ordered it for like a day. And so I had to take all the trash down to the foot of the driveway. I had to get up early to do that. And I remember everywhere I looked, I could see dew-covered spider webs.
Oh yeah.
And I was freaking
Was this after
especially
you'd watched the movie?
Yeah, I don't know. Have you ever seen the movie?
I have not. I
Yeah,
haven't seen it.
In Florida, when I was a kid, after the Saturday morning cartoons were done, like around 11 or 12, Creature Feature came on with Dr. Paul Bearer.
Oh,
I'll
Paul
be
Bearer.
lurking for you.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Channel 44's Creature Feature. And now, your host, Dr. Paul Bearer.
But he used to drive around to Needham in St. Petersburg, Florida, in his hearse all the time. But every Saturday there was the Creature Feature, and that one
well, see, I watched it
remember
at
vividly.
night. When I watched it, it was on at night.
Yeah.
And it has a great ending where it's basically like Night of the Living Dead with spiders.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
They're in a
And,
house.
Yeah, and at the end of the movie, they've boarded up the house, and William Shatner finally pulls away one of the boards, and he looks out, and he goes, "Oh my God!" And they cut to a shot, and the entire town is covered
That's right.
with spider webs. I guess it had to have been a matte painting or something like that. But there was this great shot in the movie of people running through the streets screaming while, I mean, they were actively being cobwebbed.
Yeah. That's right,
Wow.
man. I mean, I haven't seen this movie in 40
I
plus years.
haven't
but
seen it since I was a little kid.
Man, this sounds like something we need to watch.
We should revisit
We need to do a
a
retroactive
a little
rewind.
Shatner
review.
thon. Yeah.
I have wanted to watch that movie for a long time, so I would be
Okay,
totally
maybe we
down
should.
with
We
doing
need to
that.
look into that then.
So anyway,
So, how long is your drive from Knoxville, Tennessee, to Lexington, Kentucky?
it's like a 2.5 hour drive. That sounds
Okay.
about right.
Perfect.
So it was when I went up there, I started listening to his Get a Life on audio. I listened to
Uh-huh.
some of that. I really kind of was enjoying listening to that. So I was kind of getting into the William Shatner mindset. And he was talking about in that audiobook, he talks well, obviously Get a Life is a reference to the famous SNL
Saturday Night
skit
Live.
he did. And I was thinking about this as I drove up there that that skit kind of really, for lack of a better expression, took the piss out of being a Star Trek fan. Like it was
Yeah,
really like
it was
first
you were-
time it was like, hey, you know what? We can laugh at ourselves.
Right.
We don't have to take ourselves so serious.
That
Because
was.
I think there was a shift in fandom after that skit.
It's a fair point.
Man, I just
And-
remember John Lovitz and Kevin Nealon in that skit. They
my
just
favorite-
looked so terrible.
Part is when him and Phil Hartman are arguing after he's done his whole thing and he's walking off set, and Phil Hartman's doing this great. I think they start pushing each other,
Yeah.
and it's so awesome. But
Uh,
I was thinking I think that skit really kind of was a shift for fans. Like it was suddenly like it was cool to be uncool, and it was fun to laugh at. It was fun to laugh at yourself.
You and some of you have traveled, hundreds of miles to be here. I'd just like to say, get a life, will you, people? For crying out loud, it's just a TV show. I mean, look at you. Look at the way you're dressed. You've turned an enjoyable little job that I did as a lark for a few years into a colossal waste of time. You must be almost 30. Have you ever kissed a girl? When I was your age, I didn't watch television. I lived. So move out of your parents' basement.
Are you saying then that we should pay more attention to the movies?
I can't believe these people. I mean, I really can't understand.
And I really attribute that to William
Crying
Shatner.
out loud. It's just a TV show.
You ever kissed a girl?
And John Lovitz looks at the ground.
Is that what John Lovitz had the Spock ears on?
Yes. But man, Hartman, God, Phil Hartman, he was so funny.
He was great.
He was one of the best.
Okay, so anyway, I get there and it's a small little theater, and it was presented by Legion M, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with Legion M, but it's a distributor that they self-finance through people investing. So the whole thing was.
Oh yeah, I've seen his. William Shatner's done some YouTube videos.
Well, that's because his movie Call Me Bill was produced with Legion M. Okay. So the thing was sort of it was almost like a when you get an invitation,
like you're an investor,
like you're at a
for a timeshare or something like that. Yeah, it was almost like that. And the whole thing was like, yeah, you can invest, and they showed some trailers for a couple movies that they made.
It's like on the ground, boots on the ground crowd fundraising, huh?
Right. So I get there, and there's quite a few, as Matt would say, specimens there, and but everyone's real nice. So I go in, and they have the red carpet where he's going to walk in, and I guess you could stand out there and wait for him, but I had a seat that I was pretty happy with, so I didn't want to lose my seat because it wasn't reserved seating. So so what I didn't tell you about was, oh man, there was one part of it that was very trying, and there was this woman sitting behind me with her husband, and they were investors in Legion M, and they just was like, they were like, oh yes, we we're investors, and we get to invest, and we get to vote, and at one point Nicolas Cage tried to get in, and we voted him out. We took care of that right away, and like this, they're talking to this couple, and I couldn't see them because they were behind me.
Yeah, you didn't want to turn around.
Yeah, but I was like, I didn't know if the couple was like, oh my gosh, lady, shut up, or if they were actually like, oh, tell us more. But clearly they were talking it up. Oh, Legion M, so great. You get to invest, and and me and my husband, and we do. So I'm sitting there, and they're just kind of starting to crawl all over me. But I'm trying to be like, I'm trying to enjoy myself. Because I'm by myself. It was just me. I didn't take anybody with me. So I'm sitting there, and they're just, blah, 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 talking. So then right before the movie starts, William Shatner comes out, and everyone's, he says a couple things, and he goes, I'll be back out after the movie. And, it was like really cool. Also, there was, the front part of the theater was for like the major investors, and the rest of us were for the smellies, just the regular folk.
Yeah.
Wait, Mike, how big was the theater? I'm sorry.
Gosh, I mean, it wasn't huge. It was like theater sized,
like a smaller community theater,
like the Bijou or something, it was nice. It was like an older, nice theater before they were like huge.
Okay, so it's probably like one of those theaters they've restored.
Yes.
Okay.
So the whole time this lady's talking, I'm like, okay, if you're such an important investor, why are you sitting back here with
why are you
us?
behind me?
So they showed his movie Call Me Bill, and I was a little bit surprised by it. It's not really a biography. It's literally like an hour and a half or however long of William Shatner's musings. And he just kind of, it's kind of interesting. He has some interesting takes, obviously. He talks about his childhood. He talked about stuff about his father, which was interesting. And, they talked about when he went into space. And it was just kind of like the world according to William Shatner sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't really like a biography, but I ordered part of the package I got was the general admission, an autographed Blu-ray, and then the photo with Shatner. So they're showing this movie, and oh my gosh. So the woman behind me keeps talking. It's like she's in her living room, and it's just bugging the crap out of me because she's just saying stuff like, oh,
this is your only chance you're ever going to be in the same room with Bill.
And technically he wasn't in the room, but
no, but this is your moment. This is it.
I'm thinking, hey, lady, you invested in this for people to see.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you let them enjoy it? Since it was really that sort of like, oh, I paid for this, so I can act however I want, sort of thing. So I'm like, but what was really funny, and I am not making this up. Every time her husband would say something, she'd be, shh. I was like, are you joking? Oh, so then I hear her fumbling around in her purse, and I hear, and I'm like, what is happening right now? And I'm thinking she's filing her nails.
What? So it's just like a nail, like a.
Well, that's what I thought.
That's what it sounded like.
Yeah, and I'm like, why? Why? So I can't take it anymore. I have to know what's going on behind me. So I turned my head. I mean, there's no way I can turn and look and it not look.
Yeah.
Like, but I at that point I was like, I can't not look. So she's got like a plastic fan and she's fanning herself. I guess she had the vapors, but I was like, oh, gosh, this woman.
This is the 1930s.
Oh,
got the vipers.
So anyway, I had to deal with that. There was times I couldn't hear because either she was talking or people were laughing. But I was like, I have the Blu-ray. I'll get to watch this, whatever.
Right.
So then the movie ends and he comes out and he was every bit like you see him on TV.
Yeah.
Like he was fully enthused. He was invested in the spending time.
Yeah.
He was high energy. He only spoke for about an hour, which was
amazing. It's amazing.
If you're 93 years old and you're speaking for an hour,
he was telling great stories. Some I had heard, some I hadn't heard. I think it was the first time I heard about him crapping his pants in a play, which was unbelievably funny. Everyone got to submit questions, and it was funny. He goes off on tangents. Like they would ask him a question, and he would start talking about something completely different. But it was fine. But one person, this was kind of funny. So they read a question. You hear some guy in the back, well, not in the back, but towards the middle to the side, go, "That's my question." And they're like, "Oh, is that your question?" It's like, "Yeah." So he asks the question, and I guess William Shatner answers it, or answers it to the best of his abilities. And then the guy stands up, and you could feel like the whole room just clenched. He stands up and he goes, "Will you take a live question from the crowd?" And they're like, "Oh my gosh!" So they're kind of like, "What do we do?" So they're like, "Well," he's like, "Oh, okay, go ahead." So then he proceeds to ask this like really long question.
Oh man!
And it's like, when you follow some other,
he's just shouting it.
And then it's like, what? I don't know that. And you think there'd be something in his head to be like, this question's too long. I got to condense it. Oh, no. So you could tell everyone's just getting annoyed. So finally just William goes, "Sit down, you dumb F." And he said the F word. And the whole place
Wow.
erupted in laughter.
I mean, think about that though. For a quick second, this guy who obviously he's there for a reason. He's there because he's obviously a Trekkie.
Oh, but he's an investor.
He's probably hyper invested in Star Trek in his own
I don't know
world.
if he was an investor.
Yeah.
He was
No,
sitting
but he's
behind the
probably
line.
hyper invested in his own world in Star Trek. And
Of
this is one
course.
of his idols. And his idol just called him
Yeah, basically.
that's great.
And then
Which means
the
that he
whole
went
crowd,
home and he's
laughs.
thinking about that every time he watches like Kirk battle the Gorn. He's thinking that guy called me that.
But
Well,
That's
what happened to that guy? Did he just sit down in shame?
oh yeah, he sat down and shut up. So, but no, so Shatner was great. It was very entertaining. And then they did, the pictures where they lined us up,
Yeah.
and it was really, it was like, it
Just
was
moving you through.
yeah, moving you through. But it was cool. What was funny? Well, his daughter was there. I get the sense his daughter is kind of his keeper.
I would imagine so.
She kind of looks at. She was sitting right there. I stood next to her for a second. I just kind of smiled at her, and she smiled back. She seemed friendly.
Signal security to take you out.
Yeah.
Well, the guy in front of me.
Yeah. Tell us about that guy. I
So
remember
he
you
walks up
saying,
to Shatner, and I think he tries to touch him,
and that's a no-no, right?
or he tries to talk to him, and he does the Vulcan hand thing. Live long and prosper, and it's just they run up to him. They're like, "No, sir, you can't do that." Blah 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 blah. So he gets his picture made. He wanders off, and then it's my turn. I stand there, and I didn't know what to do because I went back because I almost put my arm on his chair, but I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't do that. But then I was looking through the other pictures, and people were doing that. So I'm like, oh darn, I could have stood a little closer to him.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was literally like 2 seconds. I took my picture, but as I walked off, he did thank me, and I thought that was cool that he spoke to me. So
Yeah. Did you speak to him?
yeah, I went,
say,
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
So anyway, and that was it, and it was cool. That was worth it. I was glad I did it. A couple things of note. I will say, standing right next to him, how he looks like he's 90, 93.
93.
You can see it in his eyes.
Yeah. He's
Like he looked really tired. I actually felt like a little bad for him. I'm like, oh, goodness gracious.
he's got to sit here while these specimens come and get their picture made.
But so it was kind of a little jarring to see him like that, especially after he had been so energetic in the crowd. But I tell you one thing I noticed watching that documentary and listening to him talk is that man fears death. He is not he is not at peace. Let me tell you.
He's not ready to go.
He's got a lot of questions.
Well,
I think it weighs heavily on him.
he sounds like he still has all his faculties going.
Yeah,
it sounds like he's still
totally
very
aware.
sharp, which I'll tell you,
Well, I will say he seemed to. I say a few times he seemed to like lose track of what he was talking about.
Yeah.
But I mean, all things considered, it okay. It wasn't that bad.
Right. In 2016, I was in Las Vegas and celebrating my father-in-law's like 60th birthday or something like that. And maybe it's earlier than that. Maybe it's 2015. But anyways, I saw Don Rickles on stage. Okay. So he was he sits in a chair and tells stories, which was actually very cool to hear Don Rickles tell stories. But at the time he was probably 90, maybe 89.
Yeah.
And I think he died in like 2017, but it was a couple years before he died, but he was up there and I mean, maybe it was a 2-hour show and he continuously told the same story over and over, like started it over and told you the entire story again to a very large crowd. And like halfway through some of the stories, the crowd would help him through it because he'd forget something and they'd already heard it. So they'd shout out. So when I hear like William Shatner still going strong, and you see
there was none of that.
You see interviews with William and what you say, it's like, he's right there. So I can imagine that somebody who is, as smart and as worldly and experienced and
He's super
interesting as him.
intelligent. There's no doubt he's
He
very
has to be
intelligent.
constantly knowing that he's on borrowed time and that it's not long before he meets Spock.
Well,
But I will say, he was really. It's almost like to the point of like a bit obsessive, if that makes sense.
I mean,
If you listen to him and he kind of like keeps bringing it up. You know, when a guy is fresh off a breakup and he's trying to, and he keeps bringing up his ex.
Yeah,
Dude.
it's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's what he's he has in the past 10 years or so. He's written a few books, and I've listened to those audiobooks, and that comes up a lot in those books. He's like the reason he wants to keep he thinks if he just keeps going, then he can't die. Like he wants to make plans for, summer of next year because
he might not be wrong.
He's got to be around for
He
that.
might not
Well,
be
I
wrong.
think there's something to be said about being active. I think when you're active,
Uh-huh.
you do live longer.
Yeah. I think he still rides his horses and stuff.
But time
I hope not.
always catches up.
Yeah, I mean, listen, statistically, even if he makes it to 100, which would be amazing if he did. No, and that's only like that's a snap for him.
So he's outlived Nimoy. Okay.
That's a snap. I mean, 6 years maybe that's tomorrow. So he knows that.
Especially as busy as he is, time has to just.
Well, I think there's going to be a time in the next couple of years where he says, "Okay, I can't keep this up. I'm going to have to rest."
Which I'll say how lucky you both were, because I have not ever seen him in person, that even though he was older when you guys saw him, you still saw him at his energetic best. Like he was still really out there, anxious to meet fans, anxious to tell stories, and just to be heard and remembered. And it's pretty cool.
Well, and without getting too sentimental about it, I was thinking about it, right before this was coming on, and I'm like, this man has been a part of my life for as long as I can remember, because I've been watching Star Trek like since I was a kid, since I was a small kid.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he has always been a presence in my life, as far as being on TV and movies. He every time I'd see him in something, it's like, oh, it's William Shatner. Kingdom of the Spiders, that's Captain Kirk. Airplane
Battle
2.
of the Network Stars.
Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
He's always been around.
The classic.
I didn't catch his Twilight Zones until later in life.
Yeah, I was the same way.
But they're still, we all were not born when those Twilight Zones aired.
Yeah.
Well, I think Mike was like
Zone.
17 when the Twilight Zone was on.
So
the one in the diner where he kept putting the money in the
in the Satan robot or whatever it was.
The fortune teller or whatever it was.
That's it.
But so it was kind of neat to be standing there and like, oh man, here's this guy that is, I know I don't know him. I don't have any sort of personal relationship with him, but I mean, he's really been in my life my entire life. Like it was just, I think it was very appropriate. I felt like, this was worth it. This was cool. This was I don't want to idolize anybody, and I wouldn't say I like idolize. I respect him in his body of work and what he's accomplished, and I don't know. And he's just,
but it's been meaningful to
darn
you.
entertaining.
It's been meaningful to you, is what he's done, and it's affected your life, how you thought about things, how you've watched movies, how you've watched television. I mean, it's there's very few. I mean, we talked about this with the James Earl Jones podcast that we did not long ago. There are a few people that have, in many ways, been a part of our lives and entertainment, forever, and they're unfortunately starting to disappear. So he's one of the great icons. Harrison Ford is a great example of that too. I mean, we'll have this conversation about Harrison Ford, sooner than later, which is, these are people that we grew up with, which are our heroes, and actors or not, the characters they played were meaningful to us, and they helped shape who we are and how we think. So,
but I think too, there's so much of him in Kirk.
Yeah, he is. There would be no Kirk without Shatner. I mean, we've seen the iterations which, fall short.
So I think this is a perfect segue into something that I guess it was last week showed up on the internet, sort of unexpectedly.
Yeah. And from this inconspicuous YouTube channel,
Mhm.
which um it first grabbed my attention with the short that they put together last year, where we see an old Spock visiting Kirk's grave on Viridian 3,
Right.
and very well done de-aging, or not de-aging. This was I think they call them digital prosthetics now. This was Spock laid over an actor who has a lot of Nimoy's features, um, but very effective. I mean, almost flawless looking. And I think we were all like, "Whoa, what's this about? What is this?" Because the beginning of that particular short starts with we see the cleanup of the Enterprise D saucer from Viridian 3, and then it goes to Kirk's grave, and we see that, and it was very effective.
Huge. It's great.
And in one towards the end, we get a flash back to like motion picture era Spock. He's wearing the motion picture era jumpsuit.
Yeah, if you didn't know any
And
better, you would swear it was a shot from the movie.
Yes.
no, that motion picture era shot of him is flawless. It is, you could take a still frame of that and you would never know that that's not
You
him.
could put it up next to a still from the actual film.
Yeah. It's just, but these shorts, they're all really, there's no dialogue. It's a lot of images, um, and they're kind of cryptic. Like you don't really know why they're showing you this stuff, although it's really cool. And then, like Mike said, about a week or so ago, this next iteration, there's been four.
Well, one teaser, two shorts, and then this.
Yes, and some of the shorts focus on an extremely obscure character called Yeoman Colt, who was a character in The Cage, the first Star Trek pilot. The actress they got looks exactly like this
I
actress.
thought it was her that de-aged, but it's not.
No, it's a different girl. But I got to say, I have gone down numerous rabbit holes on these shorts and found out that these, specifically some of the Yeoman Colt stuff, was pulled from a late 1990s Marvel Star Trek comic called The Early Voyages. Some panels in these comics.
Is that when they did it under the Paramount name?
Yes.
Oh, I've read
yes.
those.
Yeah. And some of those shots, like there's a shot of like the Enterprise docked in this like museum type place, and there's that obelisk thing that she's walking on. Those images come straight from that comic book.
I need to go look at that now.
Yeah, I recently procured those comics and started reading them last night, as a matter of fact. And the number which precedes all of these teasers, 765874, that is Yeoman Colt's serial number, according to this comic book.
Wow, how weird is that?
It's crazy. It's the deepest of the deepest
I will
Mariana Trench.
I haven't watched the other stuff on the channel yet, right? I've seen the original thing we talked about that came out last year, and I watched this. But I'll tell you, both of them together, and it tell me if you think I'm wrong, but it's interesting to hear you tell me about the Yeoman Rand number, because all of it has a very Lost vibe to it, to me.
A little bit, yeah. There's something just sort of esoteric and disconnected about all of it.
But bizarrely, weirdly connected tissue that still puts it all together in some weird way. So,
yeah. But this, and that we could talk about all that stuff all day long, because and I think they're still going with this. Like this latest one, Unification, is the next chapter in whatever it is they're putting together. But
so is this still ongoing?
You know what? I don't know. I think.
I felt like this was sort of like
this is a good. I mean, This actually does tell something of a story, where the other ones are just kind of these vignettes. But, we start this short with Gary Mitchell, of all people, from Where No Man Has Gone Before, the second Star Trek pilot. And he looks very godlike. He's floating in space in front of a sun or some sort of, giant stellar phenomenon.
He could have been taken right from the show, from the episode.
Yeah. And as we talked about, they brought Gary Lockwood back at 87 years old to sort of map his facial movements just to, open his eyes,
Unbelievable.
which I think probably wasn't necessary, but adds a layer of like authenticity.
Yeah.
Like, hey, look, his name's in the credits because he participated.
Yeah.
And so that's how we start. And he like opens his eyes and we see he has the silver, God eyes. So I never believed that he was killed at the end of that episode by dropping a rock on him. I just don't believe that he ever was killed like that. So, maybe he's living now. What he has to do with this, I guess you could speculate. We then go to this, this lush landscape. And, somebody in a familiar uniform starts walking through this lush landscape, like, smelling flowers and so forth. And it turns out to be James T. Kirk, circa his appearance in Generations.
I mean, he could have shot that scene during that movie. I mean, it's flawless practically.
Yeah. And crazy, we've all seen by now that Sam Witwer was doubling Shatner the whole time. I mean, they obviously put a little fat belly on him for the Kirk in his 60s, so what does this mean? What is happening? Like, Kirk walks through this lush meadow and he comes upon this group full of people, like people who mostly are faceless, people we don't know. They're dressed in bright colors, kind of like something from the original series. But he comes upon a familiar face as he's walking through, and it's Robin Curtis as an older Savick. And there's no dialogue at all.
I think I have to be honest, I'm glad that they didn't put any dialogue because dialogue is always a big giveaway.
On things like this, yes.
Yeah, it leaves it up for interpretation and questions.
I think
it's actually a piece of art this way.
Yeah.
Mike's also, I think, just talking purely technical. When a deep fake talks, you can kind of.
It's like they can never get it right.
Oh, I see what you're saying, but I mean, it's an art piece.
I think you're right there as well, Matt.
Sorry, Mike.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think maybe they knew that, and then said, well, we'll just because, I don't know if you saw the Critical Drinker's response to this video. If you haven't watched it, it is totally worth watching.
I haven't seen it yet.
He has really great feedback on it. But he mentioned something that I caught at the Savick moment that I wasn't sure about is I believe that's supposed to be Spock's son.
It is. His name is Sorak. Sorak.
I didn't see that. I have to look at it again.
There's a Vulcan standing behind her who...
And they nod at each other, and Kirk looks at the Vulcan, and he looks at Savick, and she nods at him.
That makes sense now.
Something, I think, in this particular thing they've done, I think they, for the best I've ever seen, just the micro expressions that he's giving, like how when he sees Spock's son, his eyes get wide.
Yeah, he does.
And then they squint.
Great expressions.
Wow, that's great. I got to watch it again now.
And then he looks at Savick with his mouth slightly open, like, what? Yeah, and they just nailed. I think and I don't know what they're doing, this Otoy company. I don't know what they're doing different than the other people do, but just the way this false, it's not William Shatner's face, it's created digitally, but the way they're making it work looks more real than anything I've ever seen in this kind of realm. And so, yeah, I think I think Spock's son, they pulled that name in my numerous rabbit hole journeys.
Well, I was trying to see if the actor they got to play him was the same actor who played Spock in Search for Spock when he was a teenager, because he kind of looked like him, to be honest with you. I thought.
A little bit, yeah. That's let's see. But I'm just trying to do some research on the fly to see if I can figure out who played that guy. Um, huh. Okay. Well, I can't find it now, and I'm not going to sit here and just fumble with my phone. But yeah, he did kind of look like that guy. Um, and are you frozen, Mike? Oh no, I see you moving now. I see your micro expressions. Anyway, so he's walking through this group of people, and then he comes up to this really kind of menacing looking alien guy who, through my research, discovered is he's a Betelgeusian, which
Oh
is
yeah, I didn't understand what
Yeah,
that was.
that one threw me for a bit.
it threw me too, and I had to look up what this was. And there's a reason we don't, and it's because this character comes from uh, a show that no one watches.
Oh, is that
This
one of the?
this character, his name is Yor, and he comes from Discovery, and he is a character who, in the story of the show, he originated in the 24th century of the Kelvin timeline, the JJ timeline, and he is able to move through time and through universes as I don't he's part of some group that does this. And so he is a character who is basically a doorway to where Kirk is going next.
Oh, okay.
And because Kirk ends up in the Kelvin timeline in this short. And now after he gets his Starfleet insignia from Yor, he hands it over, and then, this is where I think it turns into very 2001
Oh yeah,
type of
definitely,
thing.
no doubt.
Because Kirk then enters this realm that's just black, and he looks and he sees himself as he appeared in the 5-year mission, which I thought that was like just completely dead on. That his whole appearance there. And then he looks a little farther down this corridor and sees Admiral Kirk from Star Trek II. And according to Sam Witwer, he either those were his uniforms that he owned.
Oh, really?
Or he actually they let him go home with those uniforms because they're obviously were tailor made for his body. So they let him. So he was wearing all three of those uniforms. The original series, of course, the mighty maroon that they call the movie uniforms. But anyway, he's looking at himself here. Kirk is seeing his younger selves, and then they eventually fade away. And then he enters this other room, and we see that this room contains a dying Spock, who's laying on a bed and watching a sunset. And so Kirk sort of kind of makes his way over and sees, who it is. And again, no dialogue. They sort of do a replay of their motion picture. They clasp their hands together. And it's actually even shot in this very similar way. Like right after he's met V'Ger and he's
Yeah.
sort of, he's had his eggs scrambled, and he's like, they share this kind of wordless scene, and Spock, again, this DH Spock the Spock looks just perfect. I mean, I don't see the seams at all with Spock. And they kind of share a moment there, and then we fade to black on the sunset. And it's just a fantastic little, I don't know, like a epilogue or a coda or whatever you want to call it. But
I think coda is a perfect word for it. I feel like, because I mean, we've talked about where we stand with the franchise, and I told you I feel like there's a finale for me as far as
sure,
and
where you got off the bus.
and I feel like this is a great. I mean, unless they do more stuff that's worthwhile, but if they don't make anything else, and I feel like this is it. This is Kirk and Spock say goodbye, and it just puts everything to rest.
Well, the real question then becomes, is it canon? Because
I think it can be if you want it to be.
I agree with
I
that.
want it to be.
I agree with that. I mean, it was shot with William Shatner. It was shot with the actors. It was shot with the Roddenberry Foundation. It was shot with Paramount's blessing. It had Michael Giacchino score it. I mean,
Oh yeah, that definitely adds it.
I mean, all the right players were a part of it to make it more than a fan film. It really is, as you said, it's a perfect coda, a perfect tribute to Spock and Kirk, and that's really where those characters can end.
Mhm.
And
I mean,
it's not an ending where they're both underground on a pile of rocks where Picard left them for some reason, but it's a much more metaphysical kind of, the universe is still ahead of them in a different way, kind of way. And it's nice to let them go in that way.
well, yeah. So I think I'm in agreeing with you that I think what we're witnessing, are their final moments. Like, I think because Kirk's fate is all tied up in the weirdness of the Nexus, and what is he experiencing here? Is he experiencing is this what he's seeing? Is he's saying "Oh my" to Picard when he's laying in the dirt?
That's a great idea. I like that.
And this is what he's seeing as he's moving towards his death. And we know from Star Trek Beyond that Spock that passed away in the Kelvin timeline, and that's obviously where Kirk is. We see the picture box on Spock's like end table that he has or that he gives to Zachary Quinto's Spock at the end of Star Trek Beyond. But is any of this happening? Because that's where I think Gary Mitchell comes in. Is this like a final gift he's giving to Kirk?
Yeah, I didn't think about that. I was wondering because I was trying to, the only reason I could think they would put him at the beginning is if he had something to do with this, and maybe that is him like, seeking forgiveness or as an act of
but
redemption.
but we do see very early on though, it's weird flashes, right? We see the flash of Picard where we see Captain Kirk's body is in study stasis.
That's okay. So that's from season 3 that Mike doesn't know about, but
right.
That he's okay. So we see Yeoman Colt somehow standing in front of that display at Daystrom Station, where we find out in Picard season 3, Kirk's body has been taken to.
And they're studying him, and he's in like some kind of cryopreservation.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes. Oh. And people who have examined the close-ups of the readouts and everything, it's called Project Phoenix. So they still have.
It seems like a reference to some books that were written years ago.
Yes. The guys, I tell you, the people who made Picard season 3, they give a shit about Star Trek. Yeah. And they pull from a lot of places. And
it was the absolute Next Generation movie that we never got with season 3.
So there is that little flash of, Kirk. I mean, he's no longer laying under a pile of rocks on Viridian 3.
Yeah, but we're seeing now, you're right, but we're seeing him go, there's still splashes of like the future of one dimension in the Kelvin universe. He's in, he's all over the place.
So, but I think there's all kinds of theories. I mean, of course, because I've been off work and have nothing to do, I've watched a bunch of people like what they think this is.
Right.
And some people think this is Kirk resurrected as he was in the novels and as he might be post Picard season 3, that this is actually
what
not
he's experiencing in the chamber.
This is not in his head. This is a physical Kirk who is going to see Spock as he's dying. I don't know. I think it's more poetic to think
so.
about it the other way.
I think so too.
And like I said, maybe Gary Mitchell said, okay, you're about to die, so you're going to experience all this weird crap.
Well, also, if he's in the ribbon is you can jump in and out of any part in time.
Yeah, which is why the Nexus was just a terrible idea to begin with.
It was a cheat code is what it was. But
because, now, of course, you can still, at some point, Picard and Kirk are still in the Nexus, and they could still, there's parts of them that are still there. And it doesn't make a lot of sense. I know they sort of hastily threw that together so they could figure out how to put the captains together for the movie.
Right.
But, there's certainly a lot of
the best part about
questions.
this short is that just what you're saying is it's open to interpretation. And if you're a Star Trek fan and a lifelong Star Trek fan, you haven't seen it yet, it really is an important thing to watch because it's, Star Trek has taken some dips and dives, in the recent years, but there have been some real gems have come out. As we said, Picard season 3, I think is phenomenal. I think it's some of the best Star Trek, next to some of the original movies that I've seen. And then there's stuff like this where, we're lucky to get this stuff. We're lucky that somebody cared enough to make this and that the actors were alive to participate and put their names to it. I mean, this is a real touch point back to true Star Trek past where you have like the questions and the characters and that makes you think. It's the best thing about Star Trek ever did was make you think about things and make you wonder. And it opened your imagination. That's exactly what this short does. It's in the best vein of Star Trek. And, I think it was made with good intention. And, whether you think it's canon or not, it's really something special.
Well, I think from a technological standpoint, when you look at some of the things in this.
Well, as expressive as Kirk is pretty amazing.
Yes. I think there's no reason. I mean, when you just saw, Sam Witwer as the body double for that, that 5-year mission era Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, could you be looking at something where you can conceivably put that Kirk in New Adventures?
Yeah, but I don't think I want them to. You know what I mean? I feel like I'm afraid that if they keep doing this, they'll spoil it. You know what I'm saying? I think they've made
that's
something
the danger.
really special.
That's certainly the danger to, now that the technology just keeps getting better.
But they have something. They have something. For something very special that they could use. And I look at the Mandalorian when Luke Skywalker, albeit was not perfect, the deepfakes weren't great, but it was a special moment, and it was one of the best moments of that show. I mean, just imagine.
But then to that point, they ruined it with the season of Boba Fett.
Yeah, I mean, they really they took it. They overplayed their hand. But if they hadn't, they would have had something impactful and special. And that's what they could do with this. It could be an impactful moment. But to your point,
now if they wanted to go in the direction of if they want to center it around this yeoman, some adventures with her, like somehow with Gary Mitchell, that could be kind of interesting.
Yeah, I
want a short miniseries of Khan and his crew being picked off by that planet and having SETI Alpha 5 explode.
You never know.
Or SETI Alpha 6, whatever it was.
There's a comic book miniseries. So.
But I mean, it's a special thing. It's really kind of cool. And I'm actually going to go back and watch the other shorts because I haven't watched them yet.
Okay. Well, and that's the thing. I know, we talk as we wrap it up here, we talk about, Mike's like, well, you keep doing this, it's not special. But I think at this moment in time, that short is special because it's William Shatner and it's Leonard Nimoy. It's not Chris Pine, it's not somebody else, it's not Zachary Quinto, it's Bill Shatner and Leonard Nimoy. And that's why it works.
Yeah.
Because we never got that scene. And, maybe that's what this technology can be used for, to fill in the blanks in some places. I don't know. I mean, I know that I'm very interested to see them continue these weird collection of Star Trek shorts.
Yeah, let them keep going. They're doing great stuff. And speaking of doing great stuff, this podcast continues. In fact, what's season 8 just won't
Maybe one
end.
day somebody will do a final podcast with our digital.
We have a few more things left.
I'll tell you one
season.
thing.
What?
There was one thing about this unification, and I tell you what, as a lifelong Star Trek fan, I thought it was a huge slight. I was actually kind of insulted that they left out Will Wheaton. I mean, where was Wesley Crusher? Where was he?
Well, he's in hiding right now.
Will Wheaton is still alive and kicking, as we know from his social media presence.
Well, yeah. What's Wesley Crusher doing?
I mean,
I really want to know.
I would assume he's a big listener to the podcast, so we invite Will to come on and talk about it.
Mike, you can do the interview. I'd like to see it.
Look, guys, we got a lot. Song. We got more stuff coming up. Look, we just announced that we're going to try and get a Kingdom of the Spiders review. Retro rewind on it. Retroactive rewind. We're gonna do the black hole. Eventually, we're gonna do the black hole.
Hey, and should we just keep teasing Deke? Hey, we're gonna do a great show about Bubba Hotep with our buddy Deke.
That's not fair because I want to do the Bubba Hotep too.
I do too.
Bubba Hotep's great.
Okay, for early 2025, good, bad, and ugly Bubba Hotep.
Okay.
This is it. Okay, fair. Deke, I know you're listening. He keeps busting my balls every time we do this.
That's a great movie.
I hope he understands.
No, he's like,
we love Deke.
Hey, you guys teased Bubba Hotep again. I'm still waiting for my phone call. Like, okay, I'm sorry.
We're gonna do it. We're gonna do Bubba Hotep.
We will.
But we'd love to hear your comments, guys, on social media. Leave a comment. Spread the word. The podcast is the podcast nation that we're creating is on fire.
The tens of people in this podcast nation. I'm just kidding. Hey, look, as it is measured in the old calendar, we're coming up on Thanksgiving, so I hope you have a great holiday, and we'll try to get a couple more episodes out before the end of the year. So it's a busy time for everybody, but maybe you want something to listen to when you're traveling. Why not us? Why not us? So now, gentlemen, I'm staring at my younger self down the hallway, and I'm going to keep walking down to this sunset where I'm going to join you, Matt, and Mike, and we're all going to sit and clasp hands and watch the sunset together. So that's it for now. Tell your friends, leave a review, and please come back and see us, and we'll see you next time.
You know you can't live without this content. So subscribe to The Hyperspace, podcasting in the 25th century. Follow us on social media, leave us a review, and join us next time as we take you into the 25th century.